Good evening, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well this evening. So, there is a lot to unpack in this video. I'm going to kind of summarize things. I'm getting tired of making those 30-minute videos. I feel like I could make these videos a little bit shorter and make them easier for you guys to watch, because I know not everybody wants to watch a 30-minute video. But a brief summary really quick. And before I even get into that, lately I've noticed some of the viewership on some of these videos has dropped pretty significantly. So if you haven't already, by the start of this video, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video, of course, and then of course comments are always welcome. I often respond to them all. If I don't get to them, it's pretty rare. But that being said, we'll go ahead and get into things here. I'm going to start out actually covering the wintry side of this storm system that's upcoming, because there actually is one, but it's kind of being overshadowed by the tremendous severe threat that we have set in place for Friday in particular. And then a little later, we'll go down the line and even discuss a severe threat around the course of next week here. But what we have going on right now over towards this region, cold temperatures are already set in place across this region. This right here over towards Minnesota is going to be a little bit of a battle zone throughout the course of Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening. As the warm air advects, though, this little pocket of ice is going to eventually turn more so over into rain. So that being said, this isn't going to be a long-lived ice threat. We'll see. As you can see by the next couple of runs here, we do have this turning back over to rain. And the snow shield begins a little bit after that. North Dakota seems like a big target area right there. And then as we go forward here, we start to see a little bit of wintry precipitation develop towards South Dakota. It becomes a pocket of very formidable snow here. A nice little snow band develops. And then this kind of circulates around the area. So you get a 1-2 punch here, so to speak, in South Dakota, and even parts of Nebraska could even get into the action there. This low strengthens, and eventually we get our severe threat that comes out of that, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then after that, we'll watch this head off to the east here, mostly north of the border. Could see additional snow over towards Wisconsin and Michigan. It's out of frame by this point, though, so we'll have to switch over here. So we'll just kind of pick up where we left off here. It's about 30 hours out when things start to develop across the region here. So we're seeing some rain and snow showers develop here. We do see that ice work its way off to the north and east here towards central Wisconsin and parts of central Minnesota. But eventually, of course, just like with what we were seeing over here towards the Dakotas, this eventually switches over to rain briefly before a new round of moisture comes in with this upper level low, and eventually we start to see some snow come in. This also yields the setup for severe weather, as pre-mentioned before. Looks like towards the northern side we could see multiple storm modes, but mainly I'm leaning towards a linear type event, maybe even a cold core-esque setup or false cold core setup. But on the north side of this system is where we can expect the heaviest rain, snow, and even a bit of ice accumulation. So we will have to watch out for that before the snow wraps around on the backside of it. And it could be some moderate to heavy snow from the looks of it too. Some areas that even could be under the gun for severe weather could maybe see snow just behind where these storms will end up firing within a course of 12 hours or so, which is pretty interesting. But that just shows how dynamic that this upcoming storm actually is. We've kind of, honestly, I feel like a lot of people have honestly forgotten about this wintry side of this system. It's pretty notable if you ask me personally, considering the fact that we have temperatures over towards the 80s out ahead of this storm system in the warm sector, and in the cold sector we're dealing with temperatures that are near single digits at times, especially for the lows in the evening. We'll go ahead and take a look at that just to make an example. But you can see the warm air start to advect as we head from Thursday night into Friday, and then by Friday afternoon into Saturday, that's when we see that cold air start to funnel in on the backside of this. Some pretty significantly cold temperatures are expected behind it. So with that moisture and that cold interacting at the same point with very little warm air to affect it, we can expect plenty of snow. So that being said, let's go ahead and look at some totals here real quick. Start out looking at the euro. And I'm mainly concerned across this region. We already kind of know what's going on out west over here for the most part. Nothing's really changed with that forecast since the last time we've talked about it. Towards the Rockies is where the greatest amount of snow is going to be. And then, of course, the Sierra Nevadas and the mountains up towards the northwest. Some of the valleys could get small little pockets of snow, but for the most part, those snow totals are mainly going to be for the higher elevations. Those snow levels won't be dropping just yet. But that's what the Euro has shown us. It's a little bit bold if you ask me, but big pocket of snow develops across South Dakota with this setup here. Could see up to a foot of snow. I highly doubt that, but we'll keep an eye on it nonetheless. Also talked about this little target area here between the UP and central Wisconsin, then also parts of South Dakota. Interesting to see Iowa in the mix here as well, because this is another area that could be expecting severe weather, and then to see that switch over to snow, that would be something. Also have to keep an eye on parts of Illinois, as some of these areas up towards even northern Illinois could have severe weather 1 minute, and then potentially later within the next day you could see snowflakes. We're going over to the Canadian here, if I can. Struggling to get that going. But it's a pretty similar look. A little bit higher total over towards Wisconsin, UP, and Michigan in this case. A little bit heavier snow band seems to develop here, so we could get some higher totals out of that. Even so, I'm not sure if we're getting up to 2 feet. It's a little bold if you ask me. Here's the GFS. GFS has some really impressive totals over towards the UP and parts of South Dakota in particular. South Dakota seems really favored in this one. But for the most part, not too dissimilar here. This is the NAM, so the model that we've been looking at for the last little bit here. Couple of interesting pockets that develop here. There even one over towards North Dakota as well. Several big pockets of snow. Some of these could have some pretty impressive totals based off of this. 2 feet could be possible across Wisconsin. I don't think we'll get that much. We could get, I wouldn't rule out a foot, but 2 feet's a little bit aggressive with this, given how progressive the system is. But we'll see if this actually amounts to anything close to that. I wouldn't say I want to rule it out, but I consider that total a little bit too bullish for me. If we compare that with a blend of models, it's going to be a pretty similar deal. But the totals, of course, will be a lot less. No more than 6 inches on the area over towards South Dakota here. North Dakota, we could see up to about 2 to 3 inches. This little pocket here in the UP, up to about 6 to 8 inches, possibly in some spots. And then 4 to 6 inches could be possible across parts of central Wisconsin into parts of Minnesota here. Also have to keep an eye again over towards Illinois and Iowa for potential snowfall. Albeit light, it's still going to be crazy to have the potential for that considering the storms that we could end up seeing on Friday. Let's go ahead and get into that subject though. So our severe threat starts to really kick off on Thursday, where we have that marginal risk. It's a conditional risk. Nothing has really changed with that, but all hazards would be possible if the storms are able to overcome the capping inversion here. It's a pretty large area here where we could see both tornadoes, damaging winds, and even hail. I think hail would actually be the highest threat with this, and if the storms can break through the cap, I think the hail potential will end up maybe prompting this to go back to a slight risk. It's kind of hard to say right now. just with all the lack of parameters, I should say, in place. Then we do have this cold core setup that starts to pop up as we head into late Friday evening into the early, or late Thursday evening into the early hours of Friday here. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. And then we have the elephant in the room, which is our day 3. It's hard to say which area could end up seeing a potential upgrade. Seeing an upgrade would not surprise me, unfortunately. This is not what we want to see, but since it's here, we might as well address everything. This looks like it's going to be a very widespread severe weather mode. I think we could see multiple rounds of storms. I think the most dangerous round for anyone over towards this region is going to be a little bit earlier in the day. So pretty much from Chicago all the way through even towards Springfield, maybe even as far south as far south and west as Tulsa. We could see an early morning round of storms that would be pretty significant, and then eventually we would see this even start to trek towards areas like Illinois, towards states like Illinois, maybe even Iowa, maybe Indiana as well, even Ohio, towards the evening hours that have a more linear threat. Towards the south here, I've become a little bit more concerned about supercells. Not to say that we can't get a linear type of threat, but I think this mode lends itself towards more wind shear available. The forcing is a little more subtle, so discrete supercells seem like the greatest threat and the greatest concern to be had here. Earlier today, I did see some particularly dangerous soundings over here for tornadoes, so we will be keeping an eye on this. And unfortunately, this area I've circled, we have already been more than too familiar with severe weather and maybe even significant tornadoes across this region here. So for those of you that are in these areas, you've been through it once already, and I'm sorry that you might be in line to go through it again, but you know what to do this time. So make sure you have your plan in place. Make sure you have somewhere to go in the event that a significant event were to take place. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we have in line for Friday's threat here. So not too much has really changed here. I'm not going to go into heavy detail with this, but there is also another elephant in the room that I have to discuss, actually, and I should have discussed it a little earlier, and that's this one. I've seen some very alarming signs from this so far, and this is day 7, which is kind of alarming, but we'll keep a close eye on it. We'll talk about this in just a minute. Let's get into Friday, though. But what we have going on, this is the mid to upper level jet around about 3 p.m. Eastern time, so pretty much 2 p.m. Central. We have a very strong upper level low. The upper level trough here is pretty intense right now at this point too. We have a jet streak of almost 115 plus knots. So the winds towards the upper levels of the atmosphere, towards airliner altitude, is going to be screaming, and as a result, we're going to have to keep an extra close eye on this. And the craziest thing that I've looked at today is noticing that through all these levels, through the 500 millibar and even the 700, atmosphere is just charged up, man. I haven't seen numbers like this in a while, and there you go. There's a PDS tornado sounding. Wow. Look at that. We have off the chart capes up to about 1300 to 1300 joules, or 1400 really if you round this. 1400 joules per kilogram across the region here. Dew points and temperatures are more than sufficient. Low level helicities are really intense with this as well. And then also look at this curvature. This is getting up towards 50 knots on this as well. And there's a perfect curve, almost perfect curve. This storm looks like it could be an embedded supercell based off that heliograph there. So that's an even more dangerous reason. So if you happen to be in this area, definitely don't be that guy that's out there trying to take photos of the storms or just saying, oh, I want to see it. Odds are this is going to be odds are some of these storms will be rain wrapped. In fact, there's a pretty high likelihood. So odds are you won't be seeing it until it's a little bit too close to you. So don't mess around with these storms. Definitely take your warning seriously. That's the best advice I can really give you. But this is just looking at the 700 millibars, a few thousand feet. This is about a couple tens of thousands of feet above our head. The low level jet is also very concerning because we can see a wind up to about 60 plus knots. You really only need up to about 35 to 40 knots for tornadic development here, where we've more than surpassed that. We smashed that mark at this point. So very troublesome signals here. This helicity is almost all the way to the ground at this point. And from this, we can see a discrete supercell sounding right here. It's almost textbook right here. Very large hordeograph curve. We're almost getting towards 60 knots by this point. So this could be another dangerous sounding, of course. And there's plenty of these. That's the unfortunate part. Like all across the board, on Friday, I've seen, I can't tell you how many soundings like this I've seen. I've almost lost count practically. And I probably looked through at least about a good 5 to 10 today before I even got on this video. And this is really while I was on lunch break at work. And this is a sounding that, if I remember correctly, was near, unfortunately, Rolling Fork. And this is not even in the peak time, and we can see a very nasty looking sounding here. And again, like I said, peak time hasn't even popped up yet. Really, I would say OOZ is even more intense looking on that. So the severe weather threat tonight is going on Friday afternoon and Friday evening is going to be very eerie, to say the least. Here's a OOZ sounding for anyone that might be wondering. Another discrete storm could be rain wrapped as well, though, based off that helicity. This is like almost on the fringe of being a PDS tornado sounding in its own right here, especially once you get those STPs near 4. You could almost say that this is pretty much a loaded gun setup, and not much is really looking like it could stop it at this time. I'm hoping that somehow it won't be too bad, but this definitely is not a very good sign at all. We've gone over the temps and the dew points in yesterday's video. Not much has really changed there. If anything changes and I discuss it, hopefully it would be a downtrend at this point, because we're already in a situation where things are looking pretty ugly. Now to address the new player here, which would be April 4th. Anyone that's a weather nerd, it's very ironic that we talk about April 4th. But one other thing to note is I see something very eerie about April 4th that reminds me of another April 4th event. You might know what I'm talking about here. I rarely even want to try to talk about the potential of this even being a thing, and I'm not going to necessarily say that will be the case, because that's impossible for me to predict. To say that we could have something like a 1974 it's a little bit foolhardy to try and just go and say that's exactly what we're looking at here. But this is a very impressive trough right here that we're looking at towards the higher latitude here. We already have more than sufficient enough of a jet streak already popping up here. And really the timing of this is likely to change. Hopefully the timing is a little bit closer to this, so that way any storms that develop here couldn't take advantage of peak daytime heating. There could be variance on which day this takes shape, but if all ends up turning out like what we're seeing here right now, this could be a huge problem across a large, and I mean large portion of the country here, from the Ohio Valley all the way even into the southeast. Once again, very similar to what we're seeing this Friday, but probably even larger than that. I even saw soundings earlier across even as far out as Georgia, maybe even the Carolinas, where we could even see tornado potential based off of this here. So it's very alarming to see that 7 days out. I really don't read into that normally, but I've been seeing some alarming, and when I say alarming, I mean very unsettling trends here. Of course, this was on the 12Z run, so we could see something a bit different here. And I'm sure hoping that that is the case. I think we're kind of leaning a little bit more into the 5th here now, more so than the 4th. Either way, it's potato to me. The date to me does not matter. Already this far out to see the marginal tornado setup is a little bit alarming. But we'll be keeping a close eye on this from this point to just see what ends up happening next. I'm kind of leaning towards this, maybe shifting more so towards the 5th, but we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there, really. So we'll go ahead and switch back towards the 4th here. This could be a multi-day outbreak based off of this. And then here, like I said, here's the problem I have here. Strong helicity, strong hordeograph curve, 7 days out. Big time problem for me. I do not like seeing that at all. But this is just symbolic of the pattern that we're really in at this point. So we'll actually go over some of the parameters really quick with April 4th here for right now at least. For right now, I can say that, of course, with confidence, warm sector across the southeast is going to be abundant. So right across this region here, we're seeing 70s and 80s across a large swath of the Ozarks into the Midwest and even into the Southeast, unfortunately. So that's already one of the first red flags that you would be looking for here. And even as we get into the 5th here, that could also be another big day based off of this. That trough is really strong at all levels of the atmosphere right now, so that definitely is another red flag there. So we're already at 2. With this one, the dew points, we'll just run this forward here, and already to see this far out ahead is a big red flag too. This is heading towards 21Z, towards peak time, and I mean, just look at that. Just look at that moist sector. That's incredible. So basically, my concern, anyone across this sector right here in particular, early part of the day on Tuesday, April 4th, this could be a big event. That is huge. That is very problematic looking. Pretty much anywhere that I've clicked the sounding in that region throughout the course of the day today has had at least a tornado parameter there, if not something of greater significance. I don't know why I moved that like I did, but even further out to the east, I'm a little concerned with that. You could even see over towards Atlanta, this goes severe here. It's an interesting looking sounding there, but something to definitely keep a close eye on. Get that out of there. Oh, brother. Keep on clicking soundings now. I can't stop. Oops. And then really when we go to the 5th, it's a pretty similar deal, unfortunately. Thankfully, the moist sector is a little bit smaller in size, but it doesn't really diminish. This could look like it ends up having almost a stalled out look to it. So we could see multiple days of severe weather, maybe even an extended outbreak. So like I said, spring's here, folks. Definitely be on your guard. Anywhere from the Plains states through the southeast towards the Ohio Valley, be on the lookout, because it looks like we have a very active pattern, a very, almost I would say, malicious type of pattern that might be looking to cause a lot of problems over the next couple of weeks, potentially. So please, again, take your proper weather precautions for severe weather. And of course, myself, all the other YouTubers, your local weather stations, Weather Channel, Storm Prediction Center, everyone's going to try to do their part to help you get through whatever weather you are facing. So please, if you do your part, we will do ours. That's all we can ask for at this point. But I've been rambling enough on this video. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, you know what to do. Hit that like button. Again, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video for sure. If nothing else, for the people out on Friday that could be in line for this potentially dangerous event. And of course, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But anyway, enough rambling from me. This has been Tyler, Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys probably in the morning, depending on what parameters will be like for Thursday's event. Till then, though, take care. Have a